Hi everybody, welcome. Today I want to break down Virasana, hero's pose for you. Now if you have, tight knees, painful knees, ankles, you probably avoid this pose or have been told not to do it. Believe it or not, this is a pose that really helps to rehab the knees and the ankles, and it's even good for the lower back. But the key is to prepare for it, do some poses in before you attempt Virasana, and then use some props and specific ways of aligning the pose so that you can actually work on your knees and make it all better. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So before we go to that really deeply bent position, let's start with actually straightening the legs really well. So I'm sitting in dandasana. You can use your hands, roll the thighs out so you can feel that you're sitting evenly on your two sit bones. And then you can, even with your hands, lengthen the calves. This actually helps to open the back of the knees, right? So with your hands, like you're ironing your calves flush towards your heels. Push the back of the heels into the floor. Make sure your feet are straight up and down. Put your hands by your hips and roll your shoulders back. Let's take just a few breaths here, focusing on taking the top of the thighs down. If you can't straighten your legs, if the back of the thighs are tight, or you find that you're kind of unable to sit up straight, you just take a couple blankets under your hips and you sit up using the blankets. Okay, I'll show that really quick. For anybody that needs that, I encourage you to use props. Props are our friends. They help our practice. So the buttocks is supported, the thighs are off, and we are working on being upright. After a few breaths here, we're going to come out and we're going to sit with the feet wide apart in Uppavistha Konasana. So taking care that we are splitting the legs equidistant from the center. It doesn't have to be very, very wide. And some of the same actions that we did in dandasana, we're going to apply here, lengthening the calves to the heels, making sure the feet are straight up and down, taking care to see that your knees don't roll out. They do that when the inner thigh is tight. And again, you can sit on blankets to avoid that. And keeping the knees, the shins, and the thighs all aligned right here and staying upright. From there, we're going into a seated pose. That's the perfect prep for Virasana. And that pose is Baddha Konasana, bound angle pose or cobbler's pose. So we're bringing the bottoms of the feet together. From there, you want to look down. Press into your inner heels and the big toe ball of your foot. Press into that and see if you can just be here upright. If your knees are way up here, don't take your hands and shove your knees down. That'll hurt your knees actually. Again, take that support under your hips. You can make it as high as you need to. It'll actually help for your knees to come down and it'll open up the inner thighs. Okay, and again, don't worry if your knees don't go all the way down. It's no big deal. Okay. If you can, from there, you take your hands and bring your ankles and your shins closer to you. And then you'll take your hands behind you, press into your hands, lift your hips up, and then push forward from the back of your thighs towards your shins. So you're closing the angle between your shin and your thigh. Lengthen the inner thighs and push the big toe balls of the feet together and lift your chest. Baddha Konasana. Do this very often if you want to get into Virasana, right? And just do this very often because it's just good for you, especially for ladies. It's a wonderful healing pose. We're going to bring the knees up and straighten the legs. Now we're going to get into a couple ways that we can modify Virasana or hero's pose. First thing that we could do is just use a block. You could use blankets, whatever you have handy. I'm keeping it fairly high, so it's on that medium height, okay? And coming onto all fours, I want my feet on the outside of this block. And with my hands, I'm rolling my calves out, getting them out of the way, and then I'm sitting down. So my sit bones are dropping onto my block. Okay, and I want to take the hands and actually move my heels out. Okay, what happens very often is the feet keep sliding underneath the hips, but try to keep your feet out of the way there. Okay, And then you want to look and see that your knees aren't going so wide apart from each other. You want to line up your knees and your hips. They don't have to touch, but have the knees and the hips lining up. If this is coming okay, then you can drop your block down one level, working yourself a little closer towards the ground. Now, this may not actually be enough for a lot of us, and another way to actually support this pose is you take a blanket. Here I have it folded to about this size, what I call headstand size or shoulder stand size. And what you do with your feet apart, knees towards each other, you can put your head down and then you slide that blanket really well into the back of your knees. And you try to keep it there. Make sure it's not like cricket and over folded. Really keep it smooth. And then you will sit back down. This may be enough for you, or you may wish to add your block back in. That way you can actually hold the pose, because the key to taking care of your knees in this poses is time. You want to be able to sit here for a little while, close to 5 minutes, but you start for, 30 seconds, work your way up. Okay? Last way to take care of yourself in this pose, especially if your ankles bother you, you can keep this behind your knees and add another blanket, but so you can see better, I'm going to remove it. Now, I'm only folding it a couple of times, so it's not really super thick, but you may wish to make it very thick. So make sure you play with it and you adjust the thickness. So now it's going to actually support the front of my ankle when I sit in Virasana. Okay, so I'm dropping just the ankle, so it's not really my top of the foot, it's the ankle itself. My toes are off of the roll, but they're still on the blanket, as you can see. And then again, I'm rolling my calves out and sitting here. This may be enough for you, or as before, you can add your block. No problem. You can build up. You could even have 2 blocks, and some blankets. There's no shame in using extra props. That's what they're there for, to help us to take care of ourselves. Keeping the heels on the outside. Making sure that the toes point directly back, because we're trying to align our bones. We're trying to align our joints. So the big toe should point directly back, knees and hips aligned, shoulders back, and chest up. And you could stay here as long as you like. So just a couple ways of modifying Virasana so that you can hold it, you can work on your knees, and I hope that you found this helpful. And thank you for your time, and I'll see you soon. Namaste.